Now, KMJ's Sunday Conversation with your host, Alexan Balakian. Sponsored by Gar Bennett. At Gar Bennett, we help growers feed the world.
Good Sunday morning and a happy Easter. Welcome into an all-new Sunday Conversation exclusively here on KMJ. I'm your host, Alexan Balakian. So I hope most of you are going to add those Jelly Bellies or Cadbury's inside the Easter eggs when you hide them for the kids. But I get it. I know it's 420, so maybe there's something inside those eggs that will increase your cravings for some of those hot Cheetos. I get it. I understand. So with that being said, Sunday Conversation, lighting up the airwaves. We podcast where you podcast, and we are in high def on YouTube at KMJ Sunday Conversation. We have another action-packed hour ahead here, including a preview to the 110th commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, where Valley Armenians will be attending various events, including the Twilight Remembrance at Fresno State in front of the only Armenian Genocide monument in the nation that resides on a university campus. So, Marshal Moushigian, a fixture in Armenian issues related to the political arena here at home and abroad, is going to join me. And we will be having a very tough conversation. We're going to rip off the Band-Aid, if you will, on why Armenia and its indigenous land has been a continuous afterthought when it comes to crimes against humanity, the atrocities that still to this day are still happening in real time. But first, we begin today's episode that really kind of belongs on some kind of scenario on LA law. It's been hitting the press pretty hard, where the city attorney's office, and the city of Fresno really, lost its first case, and not really lost, it seems to be somewhat continued. We'll explain. The first case under the new anti-camping law, where the city council did approve that no camping ordinance. And does it pertain to those who are homeless or not homeless? This case against Wiki Two Hands, where he had a couple of misdemeanors, and then suddenly the case was dropped because of some technicalities in court. So we wanted to bring in the city attorney of Fresno, Andrew Janz. Andrew, welcome once again to Sunday Conversation. How are you?
Hi, fine. Thanks, Alexander.
So this case is kind of all over the press at this point. And it's just interesting. I want to start with this. Let's go backwards so we can go forwards. No camping ordinance. Give me the letter of the ordinance as it is written.
So we essentially copied and pasted another city's ordinance, Grants Pass. Their case and their ordinance went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And there the Supreme Court essentially said, we are not allowed to punish housing status. We are not allowed to go purposefully after folks who are homeless. You can, however, regulate and sanction activity and behavior. And so what this law does, and it's been enacted since last summer, what this law does is prohibit lying and sleeping on sidewalks.
Okay, so Two Hands, as they call him, he was caught sleeping on a sidewalk?
Mr. Two Hands was caught laying down on a sidewalk right after city crews had cleaned up a particular section of a sidewalk in Council District 3. Which
violates the no camping ordinance.
That's correct. And I have to be clear that our HART team, our officers out in the street, prior to arresting these individuals, attempt to offer them service in lieu of arrest. And many of these folks choose to be arrested as opposed to obtaining housing and services being offered to them.
Okay. So with that all being said, Two Hands goes all the way to court. Kevin Little, his attorney, who has been known to be somewhat of an advocate attorney for some of these cases. But it was thrown out by a judge, specifically on what grounds?
The judge believed that the city violated Mr. Two Hands' speedy trial rights, which we respectfully disagree with.
Okay. But there were some other parts of this that we'll get into in a little bit. But it's the first case. Now, this is why it's being covered. It's the very first case in which the city is going to court on this no camping ordinance.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. And so it's an unprecedented case. And I guess the big question is, you being the city attorney, I think a lot of people want to know, well, why didn't you try the case to set the precedent?
Look, like most other prosecutors who lead agencies, just like the district attorney, other city attorneys statewide, it's our job to lead the office. And I have very capable prosecutors that handled this case. They were very prepared to go to court on this. We were ready to go. We were just disappointed in the court's ruling. We think that it was a mistake on the judge's fault, and the case should never have been dismissed. And what's probably most frustrating is, in this scenario, we were able, on the eve of trial, to obtain, again, housing for this individual, housing and services. And we gave him the opportunity to have the case dismissed if he accepted these services. Again, that was declined. And tonight, we don't know where this gentleman is sleeping. And according to homeless advocate Des Martinez, I read somewhere, either in the Fresno Bee or in Fresno land, she'd indicated that he was given some housing, but it would take up to 9 months for him to receive that help. And we had a bed for him available on the eve of trial. Okay,
so the judge says, and again, I wasn't in court, I'm going to do some verbatim. The city attorney's office was not prepared.
I disagree. I disagree completely. And we can go into the weeds on it, Alexan. But essentially, not this judge, a different judge, at the urging of the defense attorney, continued the case beyond the timeout date. And so many other judges would view that as an implied waiver of the speedy trial right, and that didn't happen.
So there was also an article in which you talked to the Fresno Bee one-on-one about a particular part of this case in which the prosecutor in your office, are you allowed to say his name? It's been printed.
Yeah, it's public. Daniel Cisneros.
Okay, and he's been with your office for how long?
Been with my office for about a year.
Okay, so pretty young.
He's pretty young, but he's a great attorney.
Okay, so you give him this case, but he subpoenas a couple of reporters that published articles about Two Hands.
Correct.
But you didn't know about that.
It's policy for that to go to the city attorney if that happens. But look, frankly, reporters are issued subpoenas all the time. In this case, we weren't asking the reporters to reveal any confidential sources or information or anything like that. We simply wanted their story in evidence in the event that we needed it for impeachment purposes.
Yeah, and I'll just say this. I won't say what case, but I've been subpoenaed for a lot of my sourcing and some of the conversations that I would have with particular individuals in hopes to have a story or to get more information about a story. So some of my outsourcing has been subpoenaed. It's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon, and it's frustrating that in your situation, they were actually asking for sources and for information, where in our situation, we weren't doing anything like that. And so that never hit the news, unfortunately. And so, I think there's a little bit of bias here. Obviously, the news outlet that wrote that, the Fresno Bee, they're a little bit biased in terms of getting that subpoena. But look, at the end of the day, I think that this is an example of how prepared we were to go to trial. We were trying to cover all of our bases to make sure that once this finally got in front of the jury, we were ready to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, some city council members, one in particular, and Miguel Arias, he has come out and said, this is a homeless guy. And maybe we didn't have the compassion we needed for the homeless in this particular case. But you're saying otherwise. We did everything we could.
We did everything that we could. We offered him services multiple times.
Okay. Are you going to pursue the case further?
Alexander, that's something that we're looking at. We think that we have a great shot on appeal. I'm going to have to discuss it with our prosecution team.
When it comes to maybe subpoenaing reporters, you are not shy in saying, I'll do it again if it means we can prove without a shadow of a doubt that whatever's been written or published is genuine in fact.
We will do it again if a judge says that we need to have that reporter subpoenaed. We will do it if a judge makes us do it.
Okay, if a judge makes you do it. When you look at this on its face, though, it's not good PR for the city attorney's office.
Look, everyone makes mistakes. The biggest thing is to learn from them. And so we're going to learn from our mistakes that we made in this case. Again, we were prepared to go to trial. I think we over-prepared. And so we got to take one case at a time. This is the first one, but it won't be the last one.
The opposing attorney says that this case criminalizes people's existence. Did it?
The Supreme Court disagrees.
Okay.
We're punishing behavior, and this could be a drunk college student sleeping on the side of the sidewalk, and we would make the same arrest. In fact, in this case, the individual that was laying down next to Mr. Two Hands was also arrested, but he had housing, and so he wasn't homeless. And so this would have been the perfect test case to show, look, this isn't a law that deliberately targets homeless people. This is a law that targets behavior.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, but there's really another addition to this whole no camping ordinance that had a very disturbing outcome just in the last few days. This all unfolding. We'll talk about that. We're with the city attorney here, Sunday Conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sunday Conversation here on KMJ. Once again, happy Easter. Alexander Balakian here. My guest, Fresno City Attorney Andrew Janz. We've been talking about the Two Hands case, if you will, and now this kind of plays into something that is just horrible on the streets of Fresno. It happened in Chinatown. And this is something that's been developing over the last week. And 56-year-old Tim Smith, city employee, attacked viciously by a 30-year-old man named Dylan Padavona, now sitting in jail. But this case dives into that no camping ordinance. So again, Andrew Janz with us, the city attorney. First and foremost, we know he's been in critical condition, Tim Smith, the employee. When you first heard about this, you thought what?
It was shocking. I can tell you that the city of Fresno family is devastated by what happened. And I think many at the city have really come together in support of the family and in support of Mr. Smith. And it was just, we were all very shocked. I've never seen our city manager so visibly upset at a press conference like I saw her last week.
So you're going to see, and now if you're on YouTube, you're going to see the GoFundMe page flash before you. So you'll see it there. So if you're on YouTube, you can see it there. All right. So, but the attacker sitting in jail, he was part of this no camping ordinance.
Well, again, there's that distinction, Alexander, right? We're not targeting homeless people. And so the law that we've been talking about targets behavior, and so he may be one of these people that are engaged in that behavior downtown. We're still, as I understand, law enforcement gathering evidence. I know that it's been submitted to the DA's office and they filed charges. It's just my hope that he stays in jail pending trial here, because we've had, in other instances, a judge release him on a separate case where he assaulted another city employee, a police officer.
So wait. Hold up right there. You're saying the attacker of Tim Smith, allegedly, I got to keep saying that, he's not guilty yet, Dylan Padavona, was released beforehand after attacking an officer.
On a separate case, that's correct. He had multiple failures to appear, from what I understand. And for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason was, he was released without any type of supervision whatsoever. And this is somebody that's been to a mental hospital in the past.
And how recent was that?
I believe that was approximately 2017, 2018.
Okay. So he's out on the streets, already been arrested. He viciously attacks the city employee working on an electrical box. Obviously unprovoked. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Completely unprovoked.
Yeah. And so this is why this anti-camping ordinance so big. So my question to you is how involved are you now going to be directly on these cases? Because they're piling up, aren't they?
Sure, I can tell you that I'm pretty involved in monitoring, especially the more serious cases that are coming before, at least in terms of our office. But I can tell you again, I'm going to continue to lead this office. The council's given us more and more authority in terms of criminal prosecutions, and so that is a big priority for me and my team.
How many cases?
Under the no camping case, we're at approximately 250.
250.
That's correct, and these are all people that have been offered service.
So is this why the no camping ordinance was triggered by the city council to be approved?
I think that, and you can ask a city council member, but I think that a lot of folks, especially in our business community, business owners who had to deal with this situation every single day, people being scared to come and patronize their locations because people are sleeping and lying and drunk on the sidewalk in front of their defecating, you name it, we've seen it. So I just think that the entire community was fed up. And remember that this was a piece of legislation that was co-sponsored by Gary Bredefeld and Miguel Arias, two polar opposites on the city council at the time. And so I think that it got unanimous support because the entire city of Fresno was sick and tired of this activity.
So I want to switch gears real quick because something that is really disturbing, that is getting a lot of attention, is recently the River Park Farmers Market decided that some Asian food trucks were not allowed to be at the farmers market, but they've been there before, and apparently there was, I guess, some businesses that are part of that area, whether it be one business or two businesses or what, it's not really clear, but some of these food trucks that are of Asian cuisine received a text message, not allowed to be on the premises. It said it came from the organizers of the farmers market. But who did it really come from, do you think? What do you know about this? Is your office now involved?
What I can tell you, Alexan, is that I read the same news stories that everyone else has read. And as a person of Asian descent, I am personally offended by these allegations if they're true. I can tell you that I had a conversation today with Councilmember Arias, who has been an advocate for a lot of these vendors that operate in River Park and other parts of the city. And so I've been asked to look and see if any local, state or federal laws were violated, and we're going to take it from there.
So the property owner, the land owner, I believe is the Cashin family. Am I correct by saying that, River Park?
That's what I've heard.
So my thought is can they decide who's there, who's not? Can they play God?
Look, there are state and federal laws that prohibit discrimination based on national origin or race. And so there are state agencies that have the ability to investigate these allegations. And so we might see that coming in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I think that it's worth saying that, as you had mentioned earlier, these folks have been operating at River Park for years without any issues. And so why now? Why is this happening now?
All right. Fresno City Attorney Andrew Janz, we got to hit it there. That's the clock. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your candor. I know it's certainly a rough week for your office, huh?
Happy Easter.
Yes.
Hey, kids, don't do drugs.
There you go. All right. We're going to have Marshal Moushigian coming up. We're going to talk more about this commemorative 110th remembrance of the Armenian Genocide, but why some Armenians are just sick and tired of the same old commemoration. We'll talk about that coming up next. Welcome back to KMJ Sunday Conversation. A reminder, this Thursday, April 24th, it will be once again the 110th commemoration and remembrance of the Armenian Genocide. And yes, this Armenian will attend, as I have so many times, the raising of the flag at City Hall and all the things that go into it. But I just feel remiss that we don't have a deeper conversation and rip the Band-Aid off. And that's what we're going to do right now, because the Armenian Genocide that happened in 1915 continues today. It is not over. And so I wanted to bring in one of the biggest advocates for the Armenian Genocide and really Valley Armenians. Unceremoniously, he just really became the biggest Valley's the Valley's biggest megaphone when it comes to the wrongs and the politicizing of the Armenian Genocide through a number of published articles. So I want to welcome in Marshal Moushigian, local attorney, but obviously a very big voice when it comes to the Armenian Genocide. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Alexan. Thanks for having me.
So I really do want to rip the Band-Aid off, and I want to have a serious conversation because I always feel like we're delicate when it comes to this thing.
Correct.
But you have written some pretty darn good articles. San Joaquin Valley Sun, the Fresno Bee, the GV Wire, and I just want to say this. We're not expecting anything to come out of the White House this week.
It'd be nice if something did come out of the White House. I think President Trump knows exactly what happened. But at the end of the day, Alexan, the Armenian community, first and foremost, needs to take ownership of this issue. And I started doing this over 30 years ago when I saw that it was really going nowhere. It was the same spinning of the wheels, the same speeches, the same commemorations and remembrances that were happening. And the problem was that the Armenians were just talking among themselves. That's when I broke out and started writing for the Fresno Bee, etc., to get the word out, because nobody knew about our history. Nobody knew about this crime against humanity. Nobody knew about this genocide against the Armenians as a race, against these Armenians as Christians. And so I've been trying my best to get the word out so people understand it. It started with the press not reporting this properly, the alleged genocide, the massacres, and I said, it's not true, it's not right, it's not fair, and I'm going to do something about it. And over the years, more and more people, more and more, the press now sees the truth, that's for sure. The key is, do our elected officials see the truth and understand what the issues are for the Armenian community, especially here in Fresno? We've been fortunate to have pretty good representation in Congress, but I think the problem is that this community, whether it's the Fresno Armenian community or any other community in the diaspora, has really set the bar pretty low for our representatives. All they have to do is maybe show up, sign a piece of legislation once in a while, maybe say an Armenian word to impress us with their 2 words that they know, and we're happy, we're pacified. This community, especially here in Fresno, is capable of a lot more, it deserves a lot more, and I think it's time that the Armenian community really take ownership of this, step up, and start demanding our representatives, because we have to tell them what's important to us. If they're just going to keep doing what we ask, which is setting the bar low, nothing's going to happen. We need for them to start speaking the truth and understanding that, first of all, like you said, the genocide never ended. It started really in 1915, was put on hold for 70 years when the Soviets rolled in, but the Turks have never, ever stopped their desire to rid the region of Armenians.
So much of what we talk about right now, the unsettling of what we see across and abroad, Israel, obviously, with Hamas, Palestinians in the middle of that. We talk about Ukraine for, 3 years now. We have given billions and billions and billions of dollars of aid to the Ukrainian folks, rightfully so. Okay. Not saying that we shouldn't have. And here's Armenia, smack dab in the middle of yet another atrocity. We have given military aid to the Azeri forces.
Shamefully.
We continue to have a military base in Turkey. Correct. And all I hear from our local lawmakers is, yes, we need to do this, we need to do that. Well, talk is so cheap.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry to be on my soapbox here, but I'm mad.
Join the club.
I'm mad about this. And I think it's disgusting.
A lot of Armenians are mad, and a lot of them are disgusted, but I think a lot of Armenians have been hesitant to speak up because for so long it's been comfortable to let someone else do the talking. And I think, again, it's time that the Armenians start reaching out to their representatives and say, you need to start calling out the players in this game, the truth of it, and what they're doing.
So what do we need to do? What should legislation be doing? Now, I'm going to say, let's bring more aid to the Armenian people. Let's reclaim their indigenous land of Artsakh. Let's take away any aid that ever went to the Azeri forces. Let's put sanctions on them. Let's take our base out of Turkey. Let's put sanctions on them if they ever intrude again. Well, is that a good starting point?
It's a great starting point. We should have never given aid to Azerbaijan in the first place. And in fact, going back 25 years, Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act barred aid to Azerbaijan until the State Department could show that Azerbaijan was meeting certain parameters in not attacking Armenians and such. But once 9/11 came around, a waiver was placed into that allowed presidents to simply waive it. And they have, despite the fact that Azerbaijan has not 1 year met those requirements. Azerbaijan should have never gotten a penny for aid that's been used against the Armenians. At the same time, Turkey, of course, gets aid. They're part of NATO, like it or not. They're that tenured professor that you can't get rid of, and so we got to deal with them as well. But Turkey has outsourced their intentions to Azerbaijan because everybody knows what Turkey is about. But Azerbaijan has oil, and God forbid we offend Azerbaijan and our ability to get oil in those contracts.
So, I find it interesting that here we are. It's going to be the 10th anniversary of the monument at Fresno State, the Centennial, and obviously the 110th commemoration for the Armenian Genocide. But we sit here, and what exactly are we commemorating? I kind of feel lost at this point, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. Every 2 years or 6 years or every presidential election, whatever you want to call it, I mean, we were just in the last election where there was Adam Schiff running for senator. He came to Fresno, wanted the Armenian population to gather around him. Jim Costa has been very out front, saying that he is with the Armenian community. He gets an A+ rating for the Armenian National Committee in Washington, D.C., but still has not passed anything.
Yeah, what are we commemorating? I don't need to go to Fresno State or to the City Hall to commemorate and remember this loss. I can do it sitting on my couch watching SportsCenter in the evening. I don't need to be there. I think the Armenian community needs to take these events and really make it a public event. I think they need to have every current and past mayor attend the event, not the one at City Hall, because you can walk 10 feet out of your office and you're there. That's easy enough. I mean, the big one at Fresno State. All the current and former mayors need to be there. This is Fresno. These mayors led these Armenians. They need to be there commemorating. And if they're not there, they need to be shamed because of the history of the Armenians in this community and what we've done for this community. The commemoration committee, I think, needs to perhaps step up what they're doing. It depends on what their goals are. If it's simply to gather around and mourn and mope and curse the Turks underneath our breath and listen to the same speeches that we tend to hear every year at the commemoration and then be sent on our way and enjoy the milk and cookies, that's fine. But this is an opportunity to get our legislators' attention, and having them show up and be in commune with the Armenians in this mourning time is important. And that's just locally. As when it comes to on the national level, the Congressional Armenian Caucus, they need to know what our goals are, what our desires are for this issue. And every year, I think we tend to set the bar pretty low. This community demands more and can demand more.
Again, and part of this is not to necessarily call out lawmakers. And David Valadeo, I believe, is co-chair now on the Assembly Caucus, Armenian Caucus in D.C. as well. But my thought is that they ask for a vote, they say the right things, and then nothing's done. It's quiet, and it's quiet right now. And I don't want to put too much on the spot here, but I guess I'm going to do that for you. You had an altercation. I wouldn't say an altercation. I would say a confrontation with words, sure. Pleasantly. I'm not going to say it was some hoopla, but I mean, you confronted Congressman Costa about this.
Right, and I told him, I said, I appreciate the work that you've done over the years, but I told him, I said, at this point, you're mailing it in because we hear the same tired speeches every single year. And at some point, we need to step up what is being done. Again, that falls back on the Armenian community, communicating to them exactly what's needed. I don't think they understand sometimes the situation that the genocide never ended. And when Tom McClintock was in town last year for the commemoration, I mentioned that to him. And I think he was a bit surprised with some of the facts that I presented. Whether it's the right side of the aisle or the left side of the aisle, that caucus has a lot of potential to do good, but they have to speak in a unified voice. When I pointed this out to Jim, he said, what do you think we should do? I said, well, you sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, you should be able to say something there. But here's what I talked to him about, and you want to talk about ripping the Band-Aid off. I think what a lot of people don't understand is Israel's role in this. And this is when it gets touchy, but I don't apologize one bit for this because it's true. I had an article in the Fresno Bee 15 years ago titled Israel's Role in the Armenian Genocide. I took a lot of heat from people for that, but it's true because Israel has colluded with Turkey over the decades to keep any semblance of Armenian genocide justice from reaching the House floor. And there was an interview done by a former U.S. ambassador. She was an ambassador to some South Pacific islands, but she served in Turkey. Her husband was actually a Turkish military official. And she gave an interview to the Library of Congress, and she was crowing. She was proud as can be as to what she did working with the Israeli lobby and certain aspects of the Jewish lobby, and I'll explain that one in a moment. And at the end of it, she said, she was asked why Israel and the Jewish lobby doesn't want this legislation going forward. And she said, and this is her words, she's an intelligent woman, she knows what she's saying. She said, the Jewish lobby doesn't particularly care to share the genocide label with other groups. Now, there is not a monolithic Jewish lobby. There's certain aspects that are into this category, but honestly, Jews have been some of the biggest supporters of Armenian issues going back to Henry Morgenthau when he was ambassador during the genocide. But, you know, Alexander, you're a sports guy, you're a competitor. You know, why is it that they don't want to share that label? And the reason is, and I told this to another mutual friend of ours recently, I said, you know, the old sports cliche, there's only one number one. Nobody cares who came in second place in the genocide victim game. And that aspect of the Jewish lobby, because there's very good aspects of the Jewish lobby, but this one in particular has taken it among themselves to say that the genocide and Holocaust is ours. There's only one number one, and they've turned this issue into an industry, and they want to protect that. And that's a tough thing to say, but I'll stand by it because that's what's happened. And why else would Israel and, as the ambassador said, the Jewish lobby gotten this far involved?
And it's going to be interesting. You know, President Trump is, Benjamin Netanyahu has been to the White House now 2 times since his presidency has been reclaimed in January, and it's going to be interesting to see where he falls this week. And then the second thing I want to talk about here, you had an interesting Facebook post where Eleni Kounialakis, who's running for governor, made a post. There was an article about her, and you made an interesting post about her tie, and it's you have to really connect the dots here, but about how, you know, her background is detriment to the Armenians.
Yeah, in 2013, I think it was. So Eleni Tsakopoulos is her maiden name. The Tsakopoulos family is the Democratic counterpart of the Spanos family. They're Democrats, they're Greeks, they're huge landowners, developers. They're big in the Democratic Party. And so in 2013, her husband, Marcos Kounialakis, had an article in the Palm Beach Post singing the praises of Turkey and such. And they were married in Turkey. Members of the government were in their wedding. And I was contacted by the Armenian National Committee to say, you might want to write a counterpoint to this, which I did. Fast forward to 2020, when the Azeris were starting really to attack Artsakh, the Armenians in Artsakh. And the prelude to that was they were doing certain terrorist acts, if you will, here in California, the Azeris. They attacked the Armenian Community School in San Francisco. They attacked there's a firebombed a church up there, a certain part of it. Prior to that in Los Angeles, 2 schools were, I'll say, vandalized. There were Turkish flags hanging out front of those schools. Oddly enough, those were never classified as hate crimes. They were classified as hate incidents. Big difference. Yep. And Eleni Tsakopoulos was in San Francisco at the school saying, I stand with the Armenians. This is a hate crime. That's what she said, which we appreciate, but injustice must be done. Nothing's happened. Yeah. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. How can you not figure this out? So I don't trust her, given what her background is with Turkey.
Yeah. Well, look, that's how fast 15 minutes goes. Right. And I appreciate it. Our time has run short here. I'm going to see you on Thursday, obviously, but this conversation this is not a period. This is a ... We are going to continue this conversation for the next few weeks. I'm interested to see how things play out.
Sounds good. I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. Marshal Moushigian, one of the biggest voices we have here for Valley Armenians and the Armenian Genocide. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right, when we get back, it's my report card that I am going to give on local lawmakers, presidents, past and present, when it comes to the Armenian Genocide. We'll be right back. Finally, on this Easter Sunday, what is Let's Get Social? I have to admit, I don't watch Jeopardy as much as I used to. Rest in peace, Alex Trebek. But, all right, earlier this week, during one of the episodes, an interesting clue was uncovered in the Double Jeopardy round under the category International Cities. That clue for 800, please. This San Joaquin Valley city, Spanish for ash tree, is historically a center for Armenian immigrants.
Spanish for ash tree, is historically a center for Armenian
What
immigrants.
is Fresno?
What is Fresno?
The contestant got it right. So on this day, where Christianity is celebrated, and next Thursday, when the 1915 Armenian Genocide once again becomes front and center, I hope it's not lost on us that Armenians were some of the first to populate Fresno. As the story is told, Armenians are said to have first set foot on North American soil in the 17th century. It wasn't until the late 1870s that Armenians were recorded living in Fresno. The first Armenian to step foot into Fresno was a gentleman by the name of Frank Normart, formerly Mardiros Yanakuyan. Yanakuyan took the name Normart, literally meaning new man. The first Armenian family were the brothers of Hago and Garabed Seropian from Massachusetts, who arrived in 1881. I think it's important to know that while Armenians were making the valley their home in the 17th century, they were still being persecuted against, not allowed to buy homes. So Armenian Town was then born. Armenian Town is really the epicenter of the historical journey to the valley when the Ottoman Empire tried to wipe Armenians off the face of the earth. It's hard to believe Turkey and Azerbaijan still to this day denied it ever happened, but still forge ahead with their evil atrocities in Artsakh. Some will say I'm just, once again on my soapbox, singing the same sad story. But guess what? It is the same sad story. It is a broken record that keeps playing over and over. Politicians use the genocide and current Azeri aggression in hopes to score votes. And after they do, all is quiet again. Our nation fights for the crimes against humanity for Ukraine, Palestine, Israel. But Armenians continue to flee their homeland in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. And the cries for help and justice fall on deaf ears. So on this 110th commemoration of the 1915 genocide, we should eliminate the date. It's no longer a commemoration because the genocide is far from over. Armenians are still fighting for their existence. And for that, our so-called elected leaders, whether they be local or otherwise, including presidents, past and present, should be ashamed of themselves. The report card on this is failure. And sure, they talk a good game, but the inaction speaks even louder. And that's my time. Thanks for listening and watching Sunday Conversation here on KMJ. Enjoy your Sunday.